Welcome back, everyone, to Coffee and UFOs. I have a very special guest on tonight, so I think you will really enjoy this episode. His name is Craig Campobasso, and he is the author of the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac and the UFO Hotspot Compendium. We'll speak with Craig in just a moment. As a friendly reminder, this podcast and the Mystic Lounge podcast is rebroadcast on the UnX network every Thursday night, 11 p.m. Pacific time, 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you like either of these podcasts, please support this YouTube channel where you can find them both by subscribing, liking, commenting down below, and wherever you listen to your podcasts, iTunes and what have you. If you could review there, that would be really, really appreciated. Those little small comments, they do add up and help the channel grow and help the podcast grow. So thank you. All right, I'm going to jump right into it because I'm really excited. We have a lot to cover tonight. It's very, very cool. So Craig, welcome to Coffee and UFOs. How are you?
Hey, I don't have coffee, but I got some water.
Okay, I'll drink the coffee for you, brother.
There
Don't worry.
You go.
I got us covered.
I already had my fill of coffee today.
Okay, are you a tea person at all, or?
I really prefer coffee, but I do like tea as well. So
okay,
when I do get sick of coffee, I'll switch over for a couple of days.
Yeah. So I gotta ask you, how did you get interested in UFOs in the first place and extraterrestrials? And I mean, you had this background in, I guess, Hollywood. Is that the right word? Film and television.
Right. Yeah. I've been a casting director for well over 30 years. I cast movies and TV. And over the past 10 years, I've been, writing, producing, directing, as well as still casting. And then I've authored 7 published books that are out there. And so it keeps you busy, but I never was into sci-fi or UFOs or anything like that. When I was 26 years old, I had a major spiritual awakening. And in that awakening, I just became so obsessed with just finding out what was out there in the great big universe, right? And so I started, attending a lot of contactee workshops or talks and things like that. And started going to conferences, meeting all the ufologists, going on trips with them to learn about contactee cases and things like that. I mean, I even on one of them photographed an extraterrestrial. So, and I put that in the very back of the book of the. From an actual MUFON case. Yeah. And so that is in the very back of the book of the ET Species Almanac. It's from the Chris Bledsoe case. He has a book out called UFO of God right now. And so I flew back there with a dear friend of both of ours, and he took me everywhere. And I mean, it was just, it was amazing. Of course, we didn't see it with our eyes. It was because it was interdimensional.
Well, I was going to ask you, what's the context for the photograph?
Well, the context is the being's legs ended where our knees are, and then it had an extremely long torso, right? A very thin neck like this, and then a small oval head. It was holding a light source, and it was wearing goggles. And I'm very intuitive. The minute I saw that, I went, well, that's an interdimensional light, and those are interdimensional goggles, right? So
well, you say right, but I have no idea like how to recognize interdimensional goggles, and
well, so they just look like goggles, but the thing is that it doesn't matter it could have been glasses, it could have been something. It's just something like we use night vision.
Okay.
They're a step beyond, and they can use it for interdimensionally because they.
And when the photograph was taken, what was the purpose for taking the photograph at that moment?
Oh, because he was explaining when he came home from after the abduction, that the beings started walking out. His backyard is forest. They started walking out of the forest. So I had a Minolta camera, and as he was telling, I just kept snapping picture after picture after picture after picture. So there's the one with the being, and the one that follows is tons of streams of plasma. So when he's photographed things, the very next shot is always plasma.
Yeah, that's
Right?
really interesting, Craig. Because
Yeah.
recently here I mean, all over, but in the Hudson Valley, we had at the sighting of the aurora borealis, and when we're looking at it with our eyes, it was much more hazier, right, and blurrier.
Right.
But when you took the photograph with your phone, it picks up the UV,
Right.
so you had a more distinct.
Yeah.
Structural, you could really see the shape of the aurora borealis, the plasma lines.
Right.
And I wonder if there's a parallel there.
I don't know. I mean, there's just so much that we don't know about it. But I'm sure there's people here on Earth that do know about it. Scientists and
You think
so on. Yeah, I definitely think so.
Well, let's go back to the extraterrestrial thing, because you speak in a way so confidently, like these are extraterrestrials from another dimension. But if someone is listening to this and they're coming from the perspective of, I don't know if I believe in aliens or extraterrestrials, how do you broach the subject of the fact that there are a multitude of alleged and reported extraterrestrials?
Well, first of all, in that particular case, that gentleman was in contact with the CIA, was in contact with the government, because he's also in contact with the Lady of Light, and she appears throughout time frames, and they were very interested in that. In fact, in the ET Species Almanac documentary that will come out by the end of the year, Chris will be talking about the Lady of the Light in the documentary. But once the photograph was taken, he did send it to his contact at the CIA, and the contact said, "Oh my God, I don't know why. I hope you guys ran as fast as you can, because it looks nothing like us." But anyway, he said that they hadn't seen those beings since 1958, and they were wondering why they've returned.
And that's interesting. So they were full confidence that they have visited here before.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Look, I mean, what I've done is I've studied a lot of contactee cases, right? Which are people who are having face-to-face contact with extraterrestrials. I have a gentleman in the documentary who's also in the book, talking about beings that he has been in contact with, probably for 20 to 30 years. And his story is fascinating. He was quite terrified. And they're human. They look like us, except they look a little different. Just a little bit different in the shapes of their heads, their eyes. They're very beautiful, the men and the women. And anyway, and why they're here, why they were here, back then, and still here. Another gentleman.
That's one of the big mysteries, right? Of the why. Why are they visiting?
There's a lot of different reasons and a lot of different agendas, but the benevolent beings are here, and really what it is that there's a consciousness raising program on Earth where beings who are already fully conscious, they have unified consciousness, right? So they don't work from their ego, they work from the heart base.
Okay.
So those beings then come and incarnate on Earth. They quicken through their life, and they will have a major spiritual awakening, and then they will get connected back into to their cosmic selves, or start learning about the cosmos, and they start bringing all those experience into them. Those are called star seeds. I'm sure you've heard of them.
Yeah, and we get that information from people here on Earth, right?
We absolutely do. We absolutely do. And it also comes through contactees. It comes through people who channel. It comes from, all different kinds of things. There's actual hybrids who have extraterrestrial and Earth DNA as well that are living on the planet. There's quite a few of them. And so they're actually quite intelligent as well, and so they glean a lot of information. What I found in just meeting all these people who have had all these experiences, whether they're making face to face with extraterrestrials, going up into ships astrally, being abducted against their will, or having beings show up in their bedroom, all different kinds of scenarios. And it happens to everyone, because everyone in the business knows I'm into it. So if they've had an experience, and some of them have been hairy, they've shared them with me, right? So the thing is to find out why it's actually happening to the specific person, right? And then to therefore work with that. Because a lot of times, if they're a star seed, those beings will come and visit that being to help to quicken their spirituality, so that the more people that start raising their own consciousness, that's how the consciousness on the planet will start to raise. And once it gets to a big certain point, the tipping point, then a lot of the negative beings that are here can no longer survive in that environment.
So if you have consciousnesses coming down into human minds, for a benevolent being, that seems kind of unethical, right? Like, why would
What do you mean? What do you mean unethical?
like without giving permission, or are you saying that on like
No. There's always a permission, and if you're a star seed, you've already given your permission before you come.
Okay, right. So whoever the people are who are star seeds that are experiencing this, there's not a resistance or fear or any kind of reaction, like what the heck has happened to me.
The only ones that I see that people fear out of all the categories of extraterrestrials are grays, right? Now, there are good grays, there are neutral grays, and then there are, malevolent grays, just like we have in our society here, right? So in speaking to Yvonne Smith, who is one of the #1 regressors of alien abductions, and Barbara Lamb as well. I mean, they've done thousands of them. And Yvonne explains that usually those people are very fearful. If you remember, Whitley Strieber's experiences were fearful.
Sure.
I remember reading his book saying, I can only read this in the morning before noon. I can't read anything after that, because I was like so terrified they were going to pop in my room, my living room, and that kind of thing. And, that there was such a sense of fear in him. And then, and as Yvonne explains it, that as time goes by, they actually start to see a pattern that they're actually here helping them to evolve and to help them to overcome the fear. And if you see, that's been Whitley's trajectory as well, right? Because now he knows his experiences were positive. Same with the Travis Walton case. You know, Travis, when he was up on the ship and he woke up on the ship, there were 2 grays around him and he freaked out.
Grays and later humanoids.
Well, they were, but they were good grays. They weren't bad grays, but he didn't know it at the time.
Right. Now, is it possible that the quote unquote malevolent grays are not necessarily malevolent, but just like uncaring or cold or scientific?
Well, that is definitely true. And if you look at a lot of people that commit heinous crimes on Earth, they don't have the compassion gene.
So they're psychopaths.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So they don't have that human feeling. And so we can almost kind of look at them as being that. But, you know, there's so many scenarios on that. I think the most interesting one is that their race was dying because they went so far into being scientific. And so they had to start cloning themselves. And then the clones weren't doing well. So they realized that they had to start introducing human DNA into them so that they can get emotion. They can get emotions and start to inbred them. And that's why the parents of the humans here, right, of the DNA they took, they'll bring them up on the ship to hold the children, because they found if they didn't have that Earth connection, that those babies died. Right. Yeah. So anyway, so as they keep going up further and further and further, right, up after each hybrid, if we want to call it that, they also will regain ascension codes to go to the next dimension, because they don't have those codes.
Codes.
The codes of ascension.
You know, it's funny you say that, because if you apply some of what's witnessed and, like you said, codes and described, if you look at quantum physics and the nature of the bizarre nature of subatomic particles, you know, there is evidence, it seems, that we are living in potentially a simulation.
Right.
And if that were the case, when you say a word like codes, I think, oh, maybe that we really are in some kind of game.
Well, it's really what this is. I think Sylvia Browne, you know, who wrote over 65 books, she had incredible spiritual insight into all kinds of things on the other side. She explained that this is where you're learning. When you go to the other side, that's the real life. That's where it is. And she would joke about it, but she'd say, you know, this is hell. Over there, it's bad. Yeah, over there, it's you know, it's like here, but you don't have all of the struggles.
Right.
Right.
So this is the worst that it gets. But
this is the worst that it gets. Yes.
All right.
Earth is the worst that it gets, actually. So, you know, but
well,
it's
I was just going to ask you. So this is, you know, what we've garnered from just a few races here. How many extraterrestrial races are there?
Well, let me just tell you that here, Alan.
Because I figured, since you wrote the book.
Well, there's a book, by the way.
The Extraterrestrial
Species Almanac. So anyway, so the Alpha Centaurians, who are a Nordic race, right? They're very tall. They're in contact with many, many people in South America. I have
geographical connection.
Yes, definitely, because they really go there and they really want to help the poor people there. So they basically are just their brothers and sisters, and they wait for them to come. They heal their sick, they do all kinds of things for them. But also because they're very heart-based, because they're poor and they're grateful.
Yeah.
Right.
How do we know that they're healing the sick?
Through the contactees who are in contact with them all the time, right? So Ricardo Gonzalez is one of the contactees. He actually took a group out to Mount Shasta. He does take groups out, and the ships will come in, and everyone will see the ships. But in this one time in Mount Shasta, which was several years ago, a friend of mine went, so I have firsthand testimony that the being on Tyrol, who is over 8 feet tall, who is the contact, with almost all of them, right? All of the contactees in South America, that's always on Tyrol. And that he actually invited out of the group of about, I don't know if it was 50 to 100, something like that. He invited through Ricardo 6 or 7 people to come into the forest and meet him. And so they appear through a thing called a Zendra. We would look at it as a portal, but what's interesting about a Zendra is when it opens up, if they're on the ship, you see everything on the ship, you see the people in the ship, that kind of thing. If you were to step over the threshold, you would be actually on the ship, right?
Okay.
Which is a very fascinating thing. The other contactee who's actually in the documentary, Ricardo gave me all the information for the book, and Sixto Paz has been in the Zendra over 100 times, right? So Sixto gives us everything about the Alpha Centaurians in the documentary. Now, the Alpha Centaurians say through their contactees that they know of 1,019,000 civilizations. Okay, that's what they know of. Now, if you're into the Urantia book, which is about all of creation, it's like
I've heard of this.
It's so much. It says that Earth's number in just our super universe, there's 7 super universes and supposedly 700,000 local universes. This is what the book says. That in our Orvonton super universe, Earth's registry number is 5,342,482,337,666.
Again, I hear the term like registry. It just sounds so formal, like organized, structured,
right?
Rather than just an organic playing out of the universe. It seems like that there is intent or design behind it.
Well, the universe has intent and design behind it for sure. Absolutely.
The Urantia.
Urantia.
There's controversy around that, right? The origin, like of where that came from.
Well, I would say there is, because if you read that book, right, whoever it got channeled through, it's just mind-blowing, right? I look at everything this way. When I read something, I can take what I like, and even if I choose not to believe it, it's still information, and it still makes my mind go somewhere else to other possibilities. So I never never poo-poo anything. My other
Mhm.
favorite book that my friend J.J. Hurtak wrote is The Keys of Enoch, the Book of Knowledge, where Enoch took him around the universe and explained everything to him. And that book is, when I first got it, when I was in my 20s, it was very difficult for me to get through.
Yeah.
But JJ and his wife Desiree, who are just brilliant minds in everything, they're also in the documentary and go through a lot of major things that will help everybody sort of knit everything together.
Yeah.
Right.
Have you read the book Many Masters, Many Lives?
I've heard of it, but I haven't. No.
Yeah, it's about a psychiatrist. I forget his name, and a number of his patients under hypnosis, was discovering these like voices, these apparent beings or whatever consciousness from the other side, wherever that is,
Yeah.
with these messages that were congruent and consistent, and it was for him. It was evidence that there really is life after death. Because there was a cohesive conversation. They were sharing information that the patients just wouldn't be making up on their own on the spot. It's interesting. Where are you with that? Do you think that these extraterrestrials, like the UAPs, the UFOs that we see, are these just physical beings that are coming here and when transferring their consciousness to humans, or are those two separate things happening at the same time?
They are physical beings, and they can also exist in the fourth and fifth dimensions as well. How it's been explained to me is when you see the lights shifting like this, and you see like a craft and it shifts into the lights. So a lot of this happens at Mount Adams in Washington, D.C., because they say there's a Pleiadian base below the mountain, that you see this light thing going, and then it goes inside the mountain. And then once they get to the thing, then they blow out to their 3D craft, right?
Yeah. Now I've heard one of the arguments is that there's like a road up there, and the people are just confusing car lights, like turning
There,
and that sort of
there,
thing.
there. You know what? There's so many lights that go on that mountain all over the place that you can't drive a car on a mountain that doesn't have roads on that side of the mountain. But it doesn't matter, because it's ESETI Ranch faces it.
Yeah.
And ESETI Ranch is one of the biggest UFO hotspots in America.
Yeah, we've
If
been
you
there.
go there, you will see something. You will see it through the night vision binoculars.
We experienced something. This was like a long time ago, and we didn't have night vision binoculars, but we experienced something, but it wasn't a UFO. So
Yeah,
I'll leave it at that. But
okay, a Bigfoot?
Yeah, so possibly, we don't know for sure.
Yeah, because there are Bigfoot there.
Yeah, and I don't want to go into the whole long story, but because I've spoke about it many times. But what are some of the other more prevalent ET species that people are reporting?
Well, I think the most common are Pleiadian, from the Pleiades star clusters, Sirian beings as well, Andromedans, Alpha Centaurians, Clarions, there's one other, I can't think of it.
You said there was like over 1 million reported. If there's millions or million intelligent sentient beings out there, it brings us to the Fermi paradox. Like, why don't we see more signatures, obvious signatures of them? Why is there's still kind of a cloak and dagger, mystery around them? Because when people report UFOs, and I saw one myself, from a distance. But there is a kind of an odd behavior. It's like almost like a wink, wink. Now you see me, now you don't. Rather than here we are.
Well, maybe look at it from a different perspective. They're fully conscious. We are not. They're not here to interfere with us and our progression, but they can through star seeds. They can through those kind of incarnations. The Clarion and most of the races, a lot of those beings, because they look just like us, come and live on Earth, get jobs, and they work. I know one of my longest, dearest friends, she's in her 80s now. She knew two beings that were from the inner Earth, and she was friends with them for many, many years. She's still friends with them, but they went to San Francisco and they lived and they worked. There's another race of, I think they're either called Clermers or Kardashians. That man had to come and live on Earth for 2 years before he began his mission of patrolling the Earth and that kind of thing, which is in the book as well. So by them being here, their consciousness is so high that they raise everybody else around them, right? Each of them have a little bit of a different aspect. They'll usually pick a person, right? And they'll use that contactee and share the information. It's up to that contactee if they want to share it with the world, right? Or what have you. Look, nowadays, everyone has a cell phone. Everyone is capturing ships every single day. People who I know, like a director I worked with, who just found all this fascinating, never knew about it until he met me. He photographed a ship. My lawyer, just earlier this year, who never heard about any of this until he was working on my documentary, and I brought him to the screening. The day he was coming to the screening, the night before, he saw a craft up in the sky and photographed it.
Like a light, like it looks like a light.
No, it's they're a little bit closer, so you can see the metal, right? You can see the shape and the metal. Yeah.
Are you going to include that in your documentary or a future publication?
Probably not that, but because it's just there's a million stories like that. Yeah. Right. But
there are a lot of photographs, and even when you see a photograph that looks pretty good, people just go, well, it could be
everyone
cellophane
says
balloon
CGI, right?
Or CGI.
It's CGI. It's CGI.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why the old photographs were great, the film photographs,
right?
Because it was much easier to sort of analyze.
Yes.
You travel around a little bit, I'm sure, when you're investigating. You're based in Los Angeles. Tell us a little bit about the UFO hotspots that you've written about.
Well, we began them with the head of MUFON sending out to all the MUFON state directors to nominate their favorite UFO hotspots in America and Canada. And so they all did. I picked them out. And then the ones that had MUFON investigators attached to them, I worked closely with them on that specific chapter. If I could get directly, if the people were still alive, I would contact them. We would get whatever photographs and things like that to enhance their story. Also, I was able to get a lot of the Project Blue Book findings. And so at the end of each chapter, I would give the Blue Book findings and also the findings of, oh man, what did I just say? Blue Book and
MUFON.
MUFON. There we go. How could I forget MUFON? Anyway, I will put those findings down as well. And so really what you get is the who, what, when, why, where, why, and how, things you can do when you visit that hotspot, right? And things that you would definitely, like if you're going to go visit Giant Rock and the Integratron, because they're very close together and they're synonymous with each other, is that, you know, that was where George Van Tassel met a extraterrestrial human being named Salganda, who gave him the blueprints to build the Integratron, which was a machine that would rejuvenate your cells and prolong your life, right? Among other things. That information came in 1953. Then we have Valiant Thor, who comes in 57, lives at the Pentagon for 3 years. He comes with that similar same divine design to eliminate sickness, disease, poverty, prolong life, along with many other things that he came along with as well. I made the short film, as you can see. It's right behind me. There it is.
Here, let me do full screen. So, is it possible? Obviously, we both know people who've, have contact with Valiant Thor, for instance. Is it possible that some people are just influenced by the origin stories, the first stories that were here of these, beings that are, contacting people, and then they kind of have some experience of their own, and they just interpret it as, that's Valiant Thor or what have you?
Well, I'll say in the beginning, Valiant Thor and his vice commanders were more available. They're not today. I was very close with Dr. Strange's, who was friends with him from 1959 up until his death in 2008. So that's why I was given the task to make it into a movie. I made it into a short first, just for investors. And, I'm ready to make the big film. I just need the money.
Craig, I gotta tell you, like, I really feel like we have a shortage of good extraterrestrial sci-fi films.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, and I think a lot of that has to do with, and I'm not blaming it necessarily as like a bad thing, but with all the Marvel movies and the DC movies, I think they just eat up so much of the blockbuster popcorn entertainment space.
They do.
That there's not much left for, new ideas.
There's not. Well, the thing is, this is the first story that's based on a true story, inspired by a true story, right? I mean, we do have the pictures of him that were taken by a retired Air Force photographer. I have met 2 other women who met him in the early days, one with just Val Thor twice in 1 week. She was like 16. And another was with a woman who was also I think she might have been 16 or 17. She belonged to a UFO group, and they went out into the desert. They were told they were going to meet somebody special. And they did meet Valiant Thor, and Dr. Frank Stranges was with him. So that had to have been after 1961. But I myself have not met them, but I do see them internally. I do speak with them internally, right? Because I wrote the script. I mean, that's a whole nother show with you, Alan, that we can do another time.
That's a deep dive.
That's a deep dive, and it's a great story. But I had my own experiences with knowing that it is true and it is real, because I was hospitalized, and one of the vice commanders actually came and healed me. And I felt it that night in the hospital. And I felt her say, "You will be fine in the morning." And when I woke up in the morning, Dr. Frank was sitting in the chair, and he said, "Teal called me early this morning and said to get down here and say she fixed you up last night. Make sure, you don't let them operate on you."
And what did you do?
I told them to do another X-ray because I had a bowel obstruction for many, many days, and so they did, and it was all gone. I actually, when she was healing me, I felt like a zillion little tiny bubbles going through my intestines.
Is it possible that this is like a sort of a collective consciousness construct that actually kind of like a hologram emanates from humans, and that these are almost a creation of our own?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, we're, when you're a starseed and you come in and you do work and you do all of that, they're there to help you. They can't do it for you, but they can from afar influence your thoughts, right?
In influence, but not like take control of you.
Not take control at all. Not take control at all. They can influence it by doing things and sharing things. Like, for instance, the short film came about after Dr. Frank passed away several years. And I woke up one morning and I heard Teal's voice in my head. She said, "I want you to make a short film. I want you to start a crowdfunding campaign. You're going to make a little over $5,000 and we are going to take care of the rest."
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. Everything I asked for, I got within a day.
For you, right? That's evidence. That's for you, that you see that as proof. I know Steven Spielberg is making a film called The Dish coming out in 2026, and it seems to me like it's his. I mean, he's never lost interest. It's reignited his interest in the UFO phenomena. The latest hearings, the UAP hearings, the fact that Congress and the government is much more engaged and interested. You have the Navy implementing new rules and regulations to protect pilots for their reporting so that they're not ostracized, and also to get information and data from them. So this is a whole new era of UFO and UAP. Have you seen any connection, crossover trend in your research with experiencers and what's going on over here with the government and with soft disclosure as we seems to be coming?
Well, I think the best thing for people to follow is Steve Bassett. Steve Bassett's been, he's been working with the government with disclosure for so long. And he's really the one that's really up on that. I don't get involved in that too much because I've got so many other of these projects on my plate. But I've always felt disclosure was going to come through the people.
Critical mass, just kind of.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, Stephen is going to be on the podcast on the 14th, which is the day after the hearing. Yeah.
Perfect. Oh, that's so good. He's such a great guy.
It's fantastic. He's probably been the most frequent guest on Coffee and UFOs because, I mean, one is just a wealth of knowledge.
Oh, completely.
And you got to love his energy, like his enthusiasm. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Totally.
And he has he's committed, and it looks like you've been committed for a while too.
Yeah.
And it happens, right? It's like something in this topic, it gets a hook in you and it doesn't let you go.
Yeah.
And I have actually become more skeptical in general, as time has gone on. But I know that there's definitely a real phenomena. There's something going on, but it just never leaves. Why do you think that is?
Well, because it's the search for the unknown, and you want to know the truth, right? Just like the slogan on X-Files, right? The truth is out there, that kind of thing. That's why there's so many experiencers, because when you experience it, it then becomes a part of your makeup, right? One of my guides told me that evolution for your soul isn't just gained by living your daily physical life. It's also when you're astral traveling and going and visiting other worlds or craft, which many, many experiencers do. So then that experience becomes a part of you and also becomes a part of your higher evolution.
Sure, you can't take away an experience that you've had.
Right.
Do you think it was too far for Lou Elizondo in his book Imminent to really reveal that, one, he has, applied himself to remote viewing, and that he brought that conversation of remote viewing and touched on a little bit of like psychic phenomena, paranormal phenomena in his book, which for the general public, for journalists, whomever approaching it, would just assume it's about UFOs and UAP. Does he hurt the cause or help the cause?
Well, I always thought all of those to the stars people in the very beginning were going to be the government's way of disclosure, right? Because they all came from government positions, the CIA. I've met Tom DeLonge a few times. I've even skywatched with him. And, then they all sort of broke apart off into their different sections. But I still think, I think the more info, look, they got it into the New York Times. That was a huge deal. That was a huge deal. So they're look, they're trying. And if you go all the way back to the cover-ups, all the way back, even in Truman's time, that to just all of a sudden say, okay, there's extraterrestrials out there, right? It really would cause some kind of upheaval. We, the people who are into this, don't think that, but it really would with people who aren't, right? Because it would be so jarring for their consciousness, their belief system. So I think whatever is being done correctly, because they're just letting little bits out every once in a while and that kind of thing. And like I said, when, the ET documentary is a part of disclosure as well.
All of it, right? All of it collectively. Yeah. So, but I think that we've always had people that have come out of the government or the military as essentially whistleblowers, saying, I know something, I've seen something, I've been told something, but no one's really paid attention to those people. I mean, just look at just J. Allen Hynek, for instance. I mean, he had the inside scoop on Blue Book. Like no one better, right, than him. And he comes out and he's like, nope, this is a real phenomena. We are concerned about it as a government. There is a sort of, cover up, if you will. And what happened? Nothing happened. I mean, it excited us, right? And you had generations of people that were like, oh, finally some validation, but it didn't push the needle. Now we finally have it.
It did.
And that's why I'm not surprised that I do think that Lou, Dave Fravor, like all these people that are coming out now, they are just honestly interested in revealing the truth. I think it's that simple.
Little by little. And by the way, they've held past government positions. They're kind of tied to certain things. So
I mean, look at Christopher Mellon. I mean, he's unbelievably eloquent.
He so is. Yeah.
Yes. And, you're not that good at something if you're there to spoil, if you're there to spoil disclosure. He's actually doing an amazing job at communicating to the public.
That's right.
And to serious minds. Yeah.
He does. By the way, a little interesting thing when I was writing ET Almanac, I found my biological father, who I never met. He had
No.
since passed away. He had passed away,
Wow.
so I never got to meet him. But I met with his brother and one of his sons first. I'm very close to them now. Um, but my biological father was in the Air Force, and he was in Project Blue Book.
Oh, no way.
How's that? How's that?
And there was no other crumbs that
My one of my cousins totally into it, right? Like, he loves engaging in conversation in it. He said, "Oh, I tried to pry it out of him all the time." And he would just smile and say, "Yep, some people say they exist." That's all he
yeah.
would say. He would never say anything. But my uncle said he was a very secretive man. You know,
Mhm.
he didn't even tell his mother he got married the first time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, so I find that, yeah, very interesting. And of course, I'm good friends with Paul Hynek, and he's in our documentary. He actually
Oh,
covers
excellent. Yeah.
the Men in Black because of Project Blue Book.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
If you had one UFO hotspot to visit, what would it be?
Well, my favorite, I have two favorites
Okay.
really,
Hmm.
which I can't decide, which would be Giant Rock and the Integratron, right?
Okay.
Or the Bradshaw Ranch. I have heard stories about the Bradshaw Ranch. One of my friends that I met her in the 90s worked at the Bradshaw Ranch when it was a working ranch, when Bob Bradshaw lived there.
Huh.
And they were putting on, cookouts and horseback riding and wagon, cowboy and Indian shows and all kinds of stuff. And she told me about the Bigfoot there that was called Big Girl. She told me about, extraterrestrials being seen on the property. I have been there twice. It is in the middle of nowhere, and you have to drive through the desert. And if you don't know how to get there, you would never find it. But it's so dark and it's so terrifying that I can see, because she said, I always made sure I left before dark, because
Right.
she said it really and truly was a spooky place. I mean, they saw physically grays. They saw reptilian footprints and heard hissing.
Yeah.
I mean, everything. There was a alligator portal tree, and I mean everything.
Did you say an alligator portal tree?
Yeah, yeah, it's right outside the ranch house. It's a tree, and they
Uh-huh.
call it an alligator tree because its bark looks like an alligator hide.
Okay.
And that was a portal that Linda Bradshaw, the wife, said that negative and positive beings came through. She would feel when the positive beings would come through, she would feel them around her,
Okay.
and they would feel when the negative ones came out. And one night, the truck was parked outside, and
Hmm.
they heard all this noise, and they went outside to look. It's at night. They took pictures of it. Tom Dongo has it in his book,
Okay. Yeah.
Beyond Mysteries Beyond Dimensions, I think. And actually, the truck was crunching, and then it was moving, and then there was all this blue light around it when they took pictures.
The amazing thing with all this is you can certainly just think to yourself that, a lot of these stories are just made up, or, someone had some kind of, psychological break, or what have you. But we get reports in MUFON that are just straightforward anonymous
Right.
reports. I had one recently where it was on 59th Street, Central Park South, and right by the Trump Plaza there, and it was of a glowing orb light that was behaving oddly, and there's no other way to explain it unless the only option would have been maybe a drone, but it,
Right.
it it didn't really fit that description, especially with the way it moved and appeared, because drones aren't glowing balls. Uh, And then I had another report recently where it was just a green UFO, like, or green light emanating from a solid craft hovering above the trees. The person tried to capture it on the camera. The camera didn't work. When it disappeared, when it left, the camera worked again. It was, her phone. And these people aren't seeking attention. They're just sending these reports in, and then that's it. Like, end of story. And there's thousands, I mean, gosh, there's probably millions, globally, of these types of stories. Of all the stories that you've heard, and we've heard, quite a bit over these years, but is there one that really you stick out and you say, like, okay, look at this. If you're not convinced by this, then, there's nothing I can do for you.
Well, I think, well, I would say the Valiant Thor story because I'm so close to it, right? And I sat with Dr. Frank for 2 years of him telling me all his stories with Valiant Thor and his crew, and all of that. And my experiences with them go well beyond. People feel his energy. Dr. Frank categorized him as a seraphim, right? He doesn't have a belly button, and he really is in charge of this whole part of our galaxy, but especially is here to see the Earth shift over and change into becoming a fully conscious world where it will then rejoin with the universal society. And then, and then we'll have Star Trek on our world in living life.
Okay. Well, then we'll leave it at that. I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
Are dragons real?
Well, they sure look real in Lord of the Rings. That's all I can tell you.
I like your answer. All right.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's so much folklore unless they found a skeleton of one, right? I mean, I was in Peru and I took pictures of those giant elongated skulls in the museum that everyone's passing around the internet. And they said that, they didn't bind them to grow, that those were the actual size of their heads.
Yeah. All right, Craig, if you want to leave us with one thought, what would it be?
Work on yourself spiritually. Remember, your emotions are the tool to mastery. So once you overcome those, then you become a master.
All right, Craig, and what's your website?
Autobiography of anet.com. That's where you can get all my books, and I autograph them for you. And strangeratthepentagon.com. You can watch a short film there as well. Okay, cool. Craig, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much, Alan. Okay, I hope we get to continue this conversation another time. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. Love your comments, guys. If you want to find out more about this podcast, you can email me at paranormalnow@aol.com, or you can follow on Instagram at paranormalnow, or on Facebook you can go to Mystic Lounge, and then here on the YouTube channel just comment anywhere and I'll definitely respond to you. Thank you everyone at the UNX network, including Race Hobbs and Margie K. And that is it, everyone. Until next time, peace and love, and I will see you on the flip side.